Hello there, Covey Club members and non-members. I hope you will all sign up and become members once we launch after January. It's Lesley Jane Seymour, and I have such a great interview for you today with a serial reinventor, Pamela Donnelly, who left this very glamorous life. She was a soap star, literally a star, as she says, running around in a red teddy most of the time on television. She had been a model, and she had married a well-known guitarist and had this very fancy life, and found herself, like so many of us, saying, wow, is this all there is? And it sounds a little bit hard to believe sometimes when you have all this stuff that happens to you very young, and it's beautiful, and you're living the life everybody thinks you're interested in or you should want, and it doesn't always satisfy. And she left it all to become a secondary education expert and to open a tutoring system for SATs and ACTs for high-end students, and then reinvented herself again, doing something where she was trying to take that ACT and SAT prep mode and make it more democratized for kids who can't pay that kind of money. As we know, what's happening today in the US is kids who have the means and the ability to get help to get into college do, and those who don't. So Pamela's taken that on. She's created gate systems for college admissions, and she's about to launch a platform which is gateforstudents.com so that students themselves can go and do this. And we have a wonderful discussion about reinvention, leaving the glamorous life, finding your inner self, and really learning how giving back to others is where you find meaning. And I'd like you all to welcome Pamela Donnelly to the CoveyCast. So we have the wonderful Pamela Donnelly with us today. She's out in gorgeous Malibu. I had no idea that's where she lived, and now we can have 2 seconds of hate for her because she has such a horrible life out there, and we are in the East Coast where it's gloomy and getting cold, but we are so happy to have her here. Okay, our hate moment is over, and we're so happy to have her here regardless of whether she lives in a gorgeous climate. And she is an incredible reinventor. She has been a successful model, an actress, and on-camera talent for television. She traveled the world writing about rock bands and even married a well-known guitarist. And now she's reinventing again. And so, Pamela, wonderful to have you here. How are you, and how gorgeous is it out there?
Good morning, everybody. It's beautiful here. It is October, so we're beginning to get a beautiful cloud layer that fills the canyon where I live on a hillside. I can see the ocean in the distance, but there's clouds coming up. It always looks like whipped cream coming in. It's beautiful.
Awesome. We're jealous, all of us, no matter where, unless you live around the corner from Pamela, you're allowed to be jealous. So
oh, dear.
Talk a little bit. What I'm interested in, Pamela, is you seem to be a serial reinventor. So let's talk a little bit about your history, which after your divorce, you decided to go back to school and get your degree in 1993 as an adult at Columbia University. Can you explain that? And the reason why I ask is I'm in the middle of finishing my degree in my master's degree up at Columbia. I waited way too long. I'm 60. You did it earlier,
wow.
But still there's something really wonderful about reinventing using academia. And I would love to hear your opinion on that.
Boy, congratulations. I didn't realize you were doing that, Lesley. I'm so impressed that you've taken that step. I think that we appreciate education more the older we get, which makes it ironic that I've reinvented as a college admissions counselor for teenagers. I think, in some ways they say youth is wasted on the young. I wouldn't say education is wasted on the young, but as we get older, I think we have a deeper appreciation and more clarity about those things which would benefit us most to study. In my case, I was a television soap opera actress in leading roles serially from about 82 till about 87. So about 5 years under contract there. I was on a show called The Edge of Night, One Life to Live,
The Edge
All
of
My
Night.
Children.
I remember that. That's so cool.
The Edge of Night.
Huh?
Yes, you remember that opening? Yeah, so that was me playing, these very glamorous roles. I was very often in lingerie. I was the girl in lingerie. So you can imagine that.
I love it. That's great.
Big hair, 80s hair, big door knocker earrings. And when I did have clothes, they were always like football player size shoulder pads, right? So this was the 80s. So I have some very funny video reel and things like that people often beg me to look at. And when I'm feeling generous, I'll let them chuckle at my expense and see that. Having been in some ways treated in a way that felt very objectified, I did not find that either the modeling world. I mean, going from modeling to acting, I thought, I'm going to use my brain. This will be great. Ha ha. Insert punchline here. You get to the acting world, and it's now, instead of being hit on by photographers, you're being hit on by producers, casting directors, directors. It really was fraught with peril, with the recent Harvey Weinstein news.
Yes.
I just think, oh my goodness, I am
Do you have a story?
I am so glad.
We can break your story right
50s.
here, Pamela.
I'm happy to say I never crossed paths with Mr. Weinstein, but I met many of his ilk throughout those years. And so when we talk now about your question, academia is respite. Listen, education is salvation from exploitation on so many levels. And for women in this world, especially if you're an attractive woman, you are absolutely, pardon me, but you're screwed if you cannot have critical thinking skills, if you don't have a way to use your intellect, whether in academia or not, to navigate this world, because it is fraught with peril. I'm a mom of 3 daughters, and I will say I have raised them to really understand the way the deck is stacked. And, not that we're bitter, we love men, we think men are awesome, but we have to realize the way that our society is as dysfunctional as it possibly can be vis-a-vis female empowerment. So, education, I think, is a phenomenal tool toward, that type of self-expression, self-discovery. Really, it's not about ourselves at all. It's about what we can give the world. And I am more effective in my gift I'm here to give the world as a direct result of graduating Columbia University, going on to my master's, doing, opening several companies I've opened in the interim, and so on. So I'm happy for you. I give a big plug. It is never too late for education. Yes, I graduated in my early 30s with my undergrad, and it was because all that glittered wasn't gold. I did not find that being a television star with a fan club and a 6-figure income in my 20s actually fulfilled me very much at all, other than the ego, which is to say, not very much at all. That's the surface, right?
Wow. And that's interesting, because a lot of people are kind of hesitant to put themselves back in a academic situation. I know that when I wrote more about going back to university, a lot of my friends who came up to me, they were like, I always wanted to get my MSW and I think I'm going to do it. I saw a lot of people. It's scary. I mean, and I have to say, and I did write about this, that the terror when I sat down for my first quiz in like 30 years, I literally thought I need a bag next to me that I can vomit into, because no one's given me a quiz. I'm a top executive. I know how to handle this, but who knows if I can pass a quiz anymore. But I do think people forget about education as a tool for when you're stuck, when you're unsure, when you need a brush up. People who've stayed home for a long period of time and unplugged. Education is a great way to jump back in. And I'm glad to see that you did that in your 30s. Now, you moved over, interestingly enough, and you studied secondary education. So maybe talk about your next life then. What I discovered here is you were a drama coach at public and private schools, an English teacher, a private college test tutor, handling the SATs and ACTs, and you wrote 2 best-selling books. One was called Teen Tactics for Getting Your Teen into College, and the other one was 4 Keys to College Admission Success. So I've been through that with 2 kids, and I have to tell you, though I wanted a 3rd child and never had one, I really, after the second one, got into college. I just said, thank God I don't have to go through that crap again. That was awful. And
Mm-hmm.
I've heard people really talk about, and just the other day, someone said this, and it was someone in academia. Um, I said, what does the SAT and ACT actually measure? And they looked at me and they said, family wealth, because those who have
Mm-hmm.
access to prep tutors have an advantage. So, is the current college admissions process contributing to America's widening gap between rich and poor? And how do you see that? And then we'll talk about GATE, which tries to even that out later. But just talk a little bit about what's going on with our system of college admissions that you see.
I am so happy that you're asking this question, because it comes down to the fact that the tests themselves have been proven to have bias in terms of the results. You can measure student point gains and the way that students perform on these tests literally across socioeconomic strata. So when you look at, Psychology Today, a lot of the educational reports, those of us who are in the field who are really with our ear to the ground, I mean, it is absolutely a fact that both the SAT and ACT have bias implicit there. When you think about the fact that typically, a student who is first taking the SAT is going to score somewhere in the 1,100 to 1,200 range out of 1,600 points. And that puts you smack dab in the middle of that bell curve. And then you take a wealthy student whose parents can afford services like, my first company out here, Valley Prep Tutoring. I mean, my tutors make, a lot of money to work with families and help their kids, one-on-one in homes, in gated communities. And yeah, there's a real advantage there. So when a student can do that and they, as a direct result of that, get 300 additional points, guess what? That student can now consider applying to, if not a Cal State, possibly even a UCLA. If they were at 1,200, they get to 1,500, 1,550 out of 1,600. That is a student who is now set an entirely different trajectory for their life. And
That's right.
That systemic poverty is a problem because, I really believe, I'm first generation, by the way. My parents did not have college degrees.
Oh.
So, to be able to break that first generation mold is, it's part of why I wrote my second book that helps parents who are not college grads figure out how to get their kids into college when they haven't done it themselves. It's like this mysterious terrain, and you need a map. You've got to understand how to do it. And no one told my parents, they were wonderful parents, but they just didn't know how to do that. So that's why 4 Keys to College Admission Success was created. And, a lot of my platform and, the way that I'm able to live on this hill in Malibu is because there is such a pain point in the market around this issue of terror that we're not going to get our kids into the best possible schools. We get kids into the Ivy League all the time, but I don't feel great about that if I'm not addressing a deeper problem. I think what you asked is, why did I choose secondary education, or
Yes.
how did I go from soap star to that? And I'll share with you very briefly, that moment was actually, it was a sort of a soul crisis that I reached. I remember it was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it very vividly. I'm in New York City on the Upper West Side, walking in front of a big church that I had never been into before. The door was propped open. I was actually crying because I was feeling like I was at the end of one cycle. I didn't know what the next part of my cycle should be. I had been raised, my mother had taken me to church the whole time I was growing up. So I thought, I'm going to go into this church because I'm crying. And I found a place to sit, and I literally kneeled and prayed. And I literally sat there crying, and I was in my mind, not out loud, kind of screaming at God and saying, what do you want from me? I'm tired. I've done all this stuff. I'm not fulfilled. I don't know what you want. I don't know who I am. I'm 30 years old. What do you want? Because I can't figure this out, And when I left there, I had this really strange sense of calm and peace. And I almost immediately had clarity around this idea of teaching. I had never thought of being a teacher in my life. I had never wanted to go into education. It sounded like a horrifyingly humble path. I thought, so I'm going to go from being a TV star to making, $30,000 a year teaching in a classroom. But I didn't care at that point, because what I cared about was I wanted to have a sense of purpose. And in my case, personally, I see that as a sense of obedience to a calling. And I really felt that the way I was going to be happiest was by doing what I was perhaps placed here to do in the first place. And that's, I think, why things have rolled out the way they have, because my commitment is to obedience, to be of service. And I think that's what's happening now. And it's not me, as we all know, when good things happen, we just show up and hope that things go our way. There's a greater confluence of energy around all of us that has to move us toward those next things. So, you and I were talking a moment ago with a colleague and who was saying, I'm at a point of reinvention. And, and I encourage anybody, just from my 2 cents, like, why not check in on that deeper level? Because everything isn't just a chess move in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Sometimes the chess move has to start inside of ourselves. And that's what I think.
It's funny that sounds a lot like what happened to me when I was in the fashion business. My beginning of my career was Harper's Bazaar and Vogue. And I got to a point at Vogue where I said, this is great. I'm like living at Cartier. I can get a table anywhere in New York. I get my hair cut anywhere I want to. I can get free samples or cheaper samples. I can go to the Chanel sale. Is this all there is? And I remember then I had my first child, luckily, and I left. And while I was out, I was able to sort of reorient and say, I need to find a place where the inside of me can be fulfilled. It's not that the outside wasn't fabulous. And I was so ecstatic to be there and so lucky to have made it. But I was around the same age as you, exactly. And it's funny with these glamour careers, and some, it's interesting. Some people decide that's not enough for them, Pamela, and others, there are plenty of people who I was there with who are still there. So it's just a matter of the individual who either is uncomfortable or not uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that one's bad or good. It's just that if you are uncomfortable and you're asking yourself and you're, it's a hard thing to look around standing in, if you will, like Cartier or Disney World and say, wow, I'm so dissatisfied. Do you know what I mean? That's hard.
Well, we want to be in alignment with something that resembles, a higher truth. And so I think that when we talk about satisfaction, we have to come back to, what are the ways that we are connected to others? I think the greatest joy in life comes from being of service to others, being able to solve other people's problems.
I agree.
When we show up for them, showing up for me and just being in service to my own flesh is not, because I'm like you, I traveled all over the world. I, had a very glamorous lifestyle at one point. And I know it sounds like Malibu is glamorous, but I'll tell you, I'm in a modest house. I joke, I call it my starter mansion. It's not anything like a mansion. I've got a couple of huskies. I've got a cat. My husband and I are here. There is a much simpler way that I navigate the idea of wealth and all of that, because I don't need to be mega rich to be mega happy. I need to be mega aligned.
That's awesome.
I need to be aligned, and that's really, I think, the journey of midlife. I'm now in my 50s, and I am at a point where I'm looking at legacy. I'm like, what am I? At some point, far in the future, sure, but someday I'll leave. When I leave, what will I leave? I'm leaving 3 awesome daughters. I'm proud of my girls. I know they're doing great things. Wonderful. What will I, Pamela, leave? And, what I want to leave is the legacy of GATE that you alluded to. So that's what I'm excited about.
Let's talk a little bit about GATE then. I wish GATE had been around when I was doing the issue with Mrs. Obama, because, she was first generation also. We did the August 2015, she was the guest editor on it. And we did a page which was talking about how to get your kid into college if you are first gen or you are not, you don't have a family history of going to college. And it was very hard we literally scoured the world to find services. And it was very difficult. So I wish I'd had GATE back then. So why don't you talk about GATE, which is a digital platform that seeks to equalize access to higher education. Explain that. And is the name GATE for that reason?
Thank you. Yeah, so GATE is actually an acronym, and it delineates those 4 different parts of the process that all students have to navigate. So whether your parents are rich or poor, you've got to have a strong GPA. That's the G of GATE. So grades, applications, testing, and essays, GATE is GATE. And all 4 of those components within the digital platform that I've created with a team of about 26 excellent expert educators out here in Los Angeles. Basically, I've used Valley Prep Tutoring, which is my first business, as a laboratory within which I've grown and tested and measured outcomes with students here in the LA area over the last 4 years. And this year, we've got a pilot program going out. So, and I actually have a little bit of room. This is a pro bono pilot for students who are first generation or socioeconomically disadvantaged as defined by being on free and reduced lunch, or at risk if they're in the juvenile justice system already, things like that. We're looking to help those kids who have been most marginalized. And this is a digital tool that takes them through a full SAT and ACT prep program that we've identified as a unique patent pending curriculum. It's got a tool that helps them choose the major, understand what schools have that major, pick the right financial aid sort of strategy that's going to help them and their parents be able to afford this, helps them optimize their essays, helps them with GPA strategies, everything in there from mind mapping and speed reading to mnemonic strategies, how to memorize, things that private school kids get that public school kids don't, and that, disadvantaged kids get least of all. So for them to have virtual, my idea was, how can I scale myself? How can I take my expertise and my team's expertise and make that digital? We're living in a time of disruption,
Right.
Airbnb and Uber. Think of us as the Uber of college admissions, because now on a digital platform, anytime, anywhere, any kid has access to literally, elite Ivy League level support. And that is in an interactive, fun experience with video content and short videos from my team and I, really reflecting the diversity of the student body so they can see faces that make them feel like they identify, and measurable outcomes for the schools so that there is a grade book within GATE. So if it's an individual, the parent can look at that. If it's a school, a district, a nonprofit, they can have, they can track how the student is doing. So we say that GATE is kind of a low-touch solution for a high-touch world. Right now, the real disconnect out there is that you've got to have a mentor who's your friend who happens to have all this expertise if you're going to navigate this thing. But the truth is, with GATE as a tool, you don't have to have that. You bring GATE with you, and if you have a friend, a facilitator, a mentor, a teacher, a parent, you are equipped. You've got everything you need with that one tool to be able to get into the right fit college with maximum merit aid.
Now, you say you're still in beta testing for that, and you're looking for students to go through it. Is that correct?
No, we finished our beta last year, actually. So we had 1,000 kids. We had 1,000 kids go through. We had our flagship school in Nashville, Tennessee, Maplewood High School. Those kids had a 5.7 increase on their ACT score, which is phenomenal. And we are this year doing a 6,000 student pilot. I have 4,500 kids already committed. I've got about 1,500 spaces left. So if there are chief academic officers or heads of nonprofits that are looking to solve that problem, GATE is a great tool for that. We've already measured the outcomes. So this year is our pilot year. We're actually going to be reporting this data to some of the top very known names in philanthropy who are interested in looking at this data to potentially disseminate this nationwide to millions of students once we prove those outcomes this year.
And is there a fee for joining it? And if I'm just a kid, listening in, can I just sign up somewhere? And is it gate.com or gate.org, or just what do I look for?
Sure. If you're a school or a district, you want to go to gatecollegesystem.com, and there you'll learn about the pilot, and there's a place where you can just fill out a little form to apply, and then my team and I will be back to anybody who reaches out there within 24, 48 hours. If it's a student who is an individual, we do have gateforstudents.com launching next week, actually, so that individual students, because we've had a lot of demand for kids who their schools aren't ready to participate in the pilot, but they want the tool this year because they're in 10th, 11th grade, and now is the time. So we are making that available. We're doing it's like really cheap. We're doing it like $29 a month, so that anyone.
Fabulous.
My parents could have afforded that. Yes, $29 a month for 12 months. It ends up being $348, and you've got what you need, and you're just paying it monthly for 12 months.
So that's called gateforstudents.com, right?
Yeah, that's going live next week. Mm-hmm.
What date is that? That will be
Monday, October. You're going to have to do an edit here. Sorry about that. Monday, October.
That's all right. 16th. It's the 16th or the 23rd?
Next week, so 16.
Okay, great. Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about how every parent wants the best for their child's education, obviously. And this is such a fraught area, and so many of the members of Covey Club are well-intentioned parents. What do we do wrong in general when it comes to college admissions process? Just, is there, it's like you spend this time after having done it twice myself of like, do I push more? Should I not push? It's like you look at these horrifying parents who, if you don't go to the top schools, we're going to disown you. And you're like, I don't want to be like that. And so you don't push at all. And then, it's like, it is really tough understanding what you should do and how much you should push and not.
It's so true. And I want to say the individuation process of a teenager is one of the most painful things. When you have a child, giving birth is painful, but that's the easy part. The painful part is watching them. My daughter Lily, my middle child, turned 18 last year, and it's just one of these situations where you love your child so much, you hover
right.
as much as you feel appropriate, but they're going to be who they are. It's like you do you, you got to let
right.
them do themselves. You cannot project yourself onto them. I think to answer your question, the biggest challenges are, finding the right mentor to help them so that you don't have to be that nagging voice. But somebody does need to generally help most teenagers through this process. It's true for girls as well as boys, but I'll say some of the, male students that we've worked with over the years have, really big challenges around organization, not missing deadlines, making sure, because
the boys are the worst, Pamela. I'm sorry. I have an older boy, younger girl.
I've never raised one. Do you have a son?
I do, and he's wonderful, amazing, brilliant, all that, but was typical boy when it came to this. And it's like, okay, have you finished this? Was doing the application. He was like, yeah, it's due tonight at 10:30. It's only 8 o'clock. And you were like, are you crazy? And meanwhile, my daughter is, a sophomore and wants to know what her, college list is. It's just, the boys and girls are so different. I would say it's 20% of my friends who had boys who were on top of the whole thing, whereas the girls, it was like 99%.
Interesting. Well, I think that, without painting with too broad a brush, we can say that both boys and girls benefit from having a mentor who is not mom, because we want to have a loving relationship as they have to detach and go become individual adults living outside our home. And if the last year of their life is spent in shrill critique of whether or not they've finished that essay, that's not really conducive to the future that we've spent 18 years building.
Yeah,
so,
good point.
So I think that my biggest recommendation, and honestly, this is, with Valley Prep Tutoring, not to put in a big plug or anything, but, we have a lot of clients across the country who want to use our college admissions experts for Skype services So checking in once or twice a week with that junior, with that senior, making sure they're on track, looking at the essays, looking at their deadlines, looking at their school list, helping them through so many of the financial. By the way, I'll put in a statement here. It's October. If you are the parent of an 11th or 12th grader, you need to be getting your FAFSA together. You need to be looking at your taxes. This is the month where you do it first come, first serve for that aid. People don't know that. So there is so much that you don't know that costs you in the long run. It's cheaper to work with a mentor who knows what the heck they're doing.
Interesting. What do you think about the idea of free college education for all citizens?
You know, I love the idea of unicorns too. I just know that the world has a price tag on it.
Right.
I think it's a wonderful utopian concept, but unfortunately a naive one, given the fact that we live in a capitalistic society and that professors have to eat something more than just a ham sandwich every day. They need salaries, and books cost money, and libraries cost money, and stadiums cost money. And that has to come from somewhere. I think when you put the onus of that upon the federal government and or state governments, I think that creates other types of conflict, ethical dilemmas, controls, things that are not necessarily in the highest good of, a free thinking, society with the types of freedoms that we all want to enjoy. So I think it's a situation fraught with peril. I've been asked, would I run for government? I've been asked, because I keynote a lot and I speak on this, and I do. And in fact, I was just asked to do a congressional candidate doing education reform advisory. And, I did that with, a campaign out here just a year and a half ago for Marianne Williamson's campaign. I feel very clear that although I don't personally want a career in politics at this time, that we have to protect what the purpose of academia is from over government intrusion. So my concern is that when you say free, it generally means it's free because the government's paying for it. And we all know there are always strings attached to money. So I would want to inquire, what are those strings if we're going to go that route? I think that, given the current environment, the best we can do is to take advantage of those strategies that are available. They're not highly known. Having insider information from a professional is really a very useful thing in terms of strategizing. Merit aid is dean's scholarships, institutional aid. It's not connected to your net worth. It's connected to how well your student performs. When I get your kid to a 35 or a 36 on the ACT, you just got $10,000 a year in your pocket back on your tuition. So
that's interesting. People told me that merit was them looking at you as a future donor. So that's not true?
No, that's not true. No, future donorship. So the idea of, it's a misconception. Legacies and certainly, the Ivy League is filled with, families that can afford to buy libraries and pianos and things like that, so that those are attractive families. And I think we would be naive to say, the sons and daughters of wealthy families don't have an advantage, because the truth is they do. If the, admissions office understands that there can be, hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing to solve their budget problems, which are their pain points. Listen, their pain points are yield. They want kids to say yes, so they have a higher U.S. News and World Report ranking. They want to make sure there's no attrition or low attrition, so that they don't drop out in sophomore year because they didn't love it or they can't afford it. They have specific objectives so that they can stay alive. It's Darwinian out there. Colleges are closing. There is a fierce competition for student enrollment. And the wealthy families are, the sort of the holy grail for an admissions office, because they can, spackle together their budget. It doesn't mean that a kid who totally doesn't qualify would get in, but I think there's more mercy there, to be very candid. So merit aid is actually a combination of a couple of things. It's the GPA. It is the test score. If it's not a test optional school, I will say it is right now a trend. There are more and more test optional schools and test flexible schools out there. And then it's the student fit for the school. So If the student plays French horn and they really need a French horn in the orchestra or whatever, there can be, sports fits. They really are looking for we just got a student into University of Utah. He is one of the top, they call him in football, it's a long snapper, I think. He's the guy who does the hut hike with the ball. I'm not a big sports person, as you can hear, but he's the kid. He literally is going with a beautiful scholarship to a great university because he can bend over with a football and push it between his legs in a way that few people can. But if he had not gotten to a 3.5 GPA, they weren't going to take him. So our role in with that student was working with buttressing the test scores, buttressing the GPA, so that they could bring him in and not worry that he would fail academically while he was busy getting them points on a scoreboard.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to tell my daughter, don't you want to pick up the piccolo? I'm sure somebody needs the piccolo in their band. Don't you think? You've got to be unique here. And it was no. I like to play soccer. It's no, everybody plays soccer. That's not going to help you. This is what happens. So let's talk a little bit, go back to serial reinventors like you. Do you think for some people reinvention is in their blood? I've now interviewed so many women who are constant reinventors. Do you think that that's have you thought about it at all? Do you think that's just a DNA thing that some people reinvent and some people don't?
I think that when you are a frog in boiling water and the water gets hot enough, you jump out. So I think it truly depends on the level of discomfort you're willing to deal with in life. I mean, for me, my friends, I would say I tend to gravitate. As you and I were talking, even, long before this podcast, I like alpha women. I like women who are driven. A lot of my friends have their own businesses, their own companies. They get a lot done in the world. I like more mellow types of friends as well. But do I feel that they are, I don't think they're hardwired to be like this. And I will tell you, my own mother, bless her sweetheart, I love my mom. She's like, I don't know how you're my child, she said to me, because she's type B. And she said she just watches, biting her nails on the edge of her seat as I go through this world, because I'm constantly taking risks and, big highs and some low lows and all that stuff. And, she's like, how are you my child? So I don't think it's in the DNA, because if it were, my mom would be like me, and she's not.
Do you think it's related to risk taking? Because I don't consider myself I would never take any physical risk at all, but I do take mental risks all the time, and I'm always looking to reinvent myself.
I do think it's risk-based. I think that, there is a career type of bungee jump that we can take. When you move from, being a performer on TV into academia, people look at you I will tell you, I've had people look at me askance until I've proved my outcomes so consistently that they go, oh, wow, maybe this one actually does have a brain, 'cause like I said, in those 20s, when you're in a red teddy on All My Children,
so
and you're acting with Susan Lucci, and people are just going, okay, we get what you are. And they just want to kind of put you in a little box and stick you in a corner. And then you go, no, actually, someday I'm going to graduate summa cum laude from an Ivy League university. And they probably would have laughed back then. I had the same brain then. I had been an A student in high school. I was a very bright person all along.
Right.
But so to answer your question, the risk piece, I think, comes from, I don't know if it's nature or nurture, but I know that the willingness to be bold, to lean in, to find something that you are willing to, listen, none of us gets out of here alive, so you may as well pick something, get in a lane and commit to it and pedal to the metal and do some good before you're out of here. That's what I think is, before you're done, make sure you leave it all on that yoga mat. Sweat it out, leave it on the mat, leave something awesome behind you.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I found my mission, which is really telling women's stories and changing the world through their voices. And that came with leaving the fashion world, when I got to Marie Claire, which was a fashion magazine, but it had so much in there that I was allowed to pursue that was about women around the world and their issues. Boy, that that changed everything for me. And then I became very, very happy with having a voice on the world. And I really do believe you can change the world one woman at a time. That may sound naive to some people, but I really do believe you can. Let's talk a little bit as we get toward the end here about being an older woman and reinventing. Is it harder or easier when you're older?
Are you implying that I'm older? Yes, I am older.
It's a good thing. I saw this woman the other day at the Apple. I went to have my phone fixed, and there was a woman behind the counter, one of the Apple Genius people, and she's talking that I'm listening over, eavesdropping, and she's talking about how she loves tech, she loves her phone, she loves her job, but oh my God, she's about to turn that big number, and she's so depressed. And I almost said something to her, and then I thought, just shut up, Lesley, don't get involved, with someone else's issues. But it really made me so sad that here she was. Look at this woman, how smart she is. I mean, to be able to do the Apple Genius Bar, I mean, that is really tough, especially when you were born on the other side of the digital divide, which anybody my age is. And she was, totally upset about getting older. And the way I look at it is like, there are a lot of my friends who haven't made it. They're not here, or they're in terrible health situations or terrible family situations or whatever. I'm like jumping out of my skin. I feel like it's gravy. I don't know how you feel.
I love being in midlife. And, you shared your age a moment ago. So I'll tell you, 2 weeks ago, I turned 55. And
you're a baby.
I'm a little baby. Well, see, it's all perspective, isn't it? I'm
Diapers.
I'll catch up one of these days, I promise.
Right.
When I was celebrating my birthday 2 weeks ago, my husband, bless him, he took me to New York, my favorite city in the world. I'd spent 15 years there, of course. And we went to see Hamilton. And I had an experience of just my own joy for having survived those early ambitious years. If you know the musical, there's, a lot in there about not throwing away your shot. And I walked out of that show and I thought, I'm really glad I didn't throw away my shot, but I'm also glad I didn't get killed in a duel. And we were walking back to the hotel and we walked past the plaza. Now, I will tell you, on my 30th birthday, I was living in New York. I was married to the rock star that you talked about. I had a massive party on that second floor in the big Cinderella suite of the Plaza Hotel. And I had 100 friends over, this big lush party, and I cried that night because I was old. I cried on my 30th birthday at this lavish party because I was old. So, here I was 25 years later on that same birthday, walking past and looking up at the Plaza Hotel and thinking to myself, I am so darn glad that I am 25 years down the road, that I have, committed in the ways that I have. I haven't lived a perfect life. I mean, I've done some really stupid things, and I have regrets like everybody else, and bumps and bruises to show for it. But at the end of the day, I would not go back to being 30. I would not go back to being 40. I wouldn't even go back to 50. 55 is perfect because at this point, as I said, my focus is no longer about me, myself, and I. My focus is shifting away because I don't have young kids anymore. I'm able to really give myself to the legacy I'm looking to build. And right now it's really about GATE, and it's about making sure that first generation and disadvantaged kids have a fair shot for college. That's what I'm clear that I'm here to do. And I am clear that those who help me will be helping a noble cause. And that's it. So, I invite anybody who's listening, find out about gatecollegesystem.com. We're doing cool stuff. It's very, very simple. The world needs to be a little bit more fair. And we can make it that way. We can make it that way through the miracle of ed tech. So let's do that, shall we?
So what do you want my listeners to do? You want them to pass along the information about GATE to any educators they know who work with those types of kids who are disadvantaged. And then also to those kids coming up, which is GATES for Student, who may find themselves in that same situation, correct?
Yeah, that's perfect. And,
Okay.
I would just mention if the parents have kids between ninth and 12th grade and you want them to have a mentor, you can certainly reach out to me, Pamela at gatecollegesystem.com. I can certainly put you in touch with amazing people who can work one-on-one with your student as well. I'd be happy to.
Great. Now, just to close, can you give our listeners 3 specific tips or tricks that will help them manifest their own reinvention?
Number 1, get very quiet, whether you do it on a walk or on a meditation mat, and ask your higher self, not the ego, tap in, get very quiet, and ask your higher self, who do you need me to be in this life? That would be my first recommendation, because when I did that, I got a very specific answer, and I've been happy ever since. The second thing I would say is do not focus on money as a part of the equation when you're deciding. The money has found me, but it's found me because I was obedient to something that at first sounded really counterintuitive, to go from, being on TV to being a classroom teacher. But it was the perfect path for me. I'm so glad that I took that risk. And, money is a false god to serve. Do not serve money, because it will leave you abandoned and sad every time. When it runs out, what do you got? And I think third, look for what you can give, not what you can get. So find a problem that feels unfair to you, something perhaps that you've experienced, and seek to be a conduit for information or help or support to another person who is having that same problem, where you can be the mentor, you can be that hope for them in the world. I think that that's going to bring you the joy, and I think that's going to make the world a brighter place, which is what we all want to see.
Awesome, Pamela. Thank you for such a fabulous conversation today. And I am so grateful that we met so long ago at Alley to the Valley, when you were just thinking about GATE and I was just thinking about Covey Club and what I was going to do next. And you were so wonderful about staying in touch and updating me about what you're doing. And keep the couch ready for me, because when I come to LA, I'm coming to visit. So thanks so much.
And Lesley, thank you so much. And I'm going to say one more quick thing. The reason I approached you at that big networking event, I loved More Magazine. My mother bought me a subscription to More Magazine when I turned 40. And I have known who you are for a long time, and you were kind of like a mini celebrity in my mind. So when I saw you, I thought, I'm going to go say hi, and I took it, and you were very gracious. So I just want all your listeners to know you were very gracious. You did a selfie with me. I shared it with my mom. It made her day. So it's so exciting. I think that other women, here we are. Let's do cool stuff. You're very welcome. Thanks for the interview. I enjoyed this so much.
Good. Thank you. So this is Lesley Jane Seymour saying thank you for joining us on CoveyCast today and listening to Pamela Donnelly's very inspiring reinvention story. Each one of these reinventions is so different. I'm always blown away by how women just take themselves in and out of different situations and decide, this is what I'm going to do. I've had enough and it's time to change. So I'm hoping that you are as inspired as I am by listening to all these great women. I'm hoping that you are finding actual nuggets that you can take with you today and use tomorrow to get your own reinvention going. I would love to hear from you about what you think about the CoveyCast. You can email me at Lesley, Lesley, at coveycast.com, Covey. Sorry, it's coveyclub.com, not coveycast.com. And I would love to hear what you think of the podcast. And I really would appreciate it if you are inspired and if you like these stories, if you would share CoveyCast with your friends, and if you would give us a rating. That's the way that other people will find out if we exist and what's special about us. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for joining CoveyCast, and I will talk to you soon.